what looks like an ordinary soccer mom SUV may actually be one of the best-kept secrets on the road.
I like to think of these as a wolf in sheep's clothing.
It's tough enough to resist gunfire, fast enough to evade an ambush, strong enough to repel an attack, and smart enough to strike back. Built with military technology, scientific know-how, sleek design, and pure guts. Once a rarity, now in demand. For those who need a fortress on wheels and want to know how they're built, join us now as we explore the science of armored cars. It's a frightening scenario. A VIP in transit is followed and ambushed. But this passenger is protected because he's in a vehicle that's armed to the teeth and able to escape.
Deploy.
As the world grows more dangerous, with abductions, assassinations, and assaults, the need for personal security is growing, especially for politicians, high-profile executives, and celebrities. And for those who want protection on the road, an armored vehicle is the first line of defense. Armored vehicles are a specialized form of transportation with varying levels of armor and protection. Level 1 is the first step up from the average passenger vehicle, with just enough protection to stop a small caliber bullet from penetrating its armor. A Level 10 vehicle can repel high-velocity, armor-piercing rounds.
So you could be ambushed, rammed, fired at, exploded, and still be safe in a vehicle that's a high level of protection.
The main purpose of an armored car is to reduce risk. So most clients want a vehicle that blends into the environment and doesn't attract attention.
These vehicles are on the streets. It may be passing you by and you don't know it.
In most cases, civilian armored cars are aftermarket alterations made to assembly line vehicles. Both of these sedans appear to be straight off the showroom floor, but they're not. The one on the left is a fortress on wheels, with enough armor protection to stop multiple rifle rounds and deliver its passengers to safety. The other vehicle would deliver its passengers DOA. But not everyone can buy an armored car. The U.S. government closely monitors and controls the export of high-level armored vehicles to make sure one doesn't fall into the wrong hands.
There's no chance of the bad guys calling on the phone and say, I'd like one of these, and give us a Visa card and ship it off. That's not going to happen.
When someone approaches us, there's a vetting process because there are an awful lot of people that are very interested in the whole idea of an armored car that have no business at all being in an armored car.
There are less than 20 licensed armored car manufacturers in the United States, and Alpine Armoring is considered one of the best. Alpine starts the conversion process by advising their customers on the kind of car they should purchase.
The vehicle, sedan or SUV, needs to have gross vehicle weight. The payload has to be there, as well as the engine has to be powerful enough to allow the added weight.
SUVs are usually recommended for armoring because of their size, power, and 4x4 capability. And their popularity allows them to blend into any American city without drawing unwanted attention. This SUV has just been sent to Alpine for armoring. With its 5.5-liter V8 engine, it's the perfect SUV to withstand the additional weight and stress that armoring will put on it. Over the next 3 months, this vehicle will undergo a 6-phase process to convert it from an off-the-lot passenger vehicle to a Level 9 armored SUV. It will gain approximately 1,500 pounds in armor, bulletproof glass, and protective frame reinforcements. It will be outfitted with a heavy-duty suspension to handle the extra load and new run-flat tires that can be blown out and still continue to drive for at least 50 more miles. This conversion will be a success if Alpine can make these changes without altering the vehicle's appearance.
The more natural, normal, properly behaving vehicle we produce, the better it is. The more noticeable it becomes, the less desirable it is.
Phase 1. The interior of the vehicle is completely stripped.
We take this brand new car that's, say, worth $100,000 and take it down to a level somewhere closer to maybe $20,000 before we take it back up to a level of $250,000 or more.
Work begins by covering the SUV in spark-resistant paper to protect its showroom surface. Next, the upholstery, carpeting, and seats are removed. Removing the dashboard alone takes 4 hours. Then each part is carefully inventoried and stored in a protective container. Alpine has cameras on the production floor that allow their executives to monitor progress on the vehicles.
Yeah, get a shot of the VIN. If the VIN is still on it, we want to see the VIN number.
It also allows Alpine customers to view the day-to-day armoring process from anywhere in the world.
They could be in Europe, in Africa, or elsewhere. We give them access to see what is happening to the vehicle right at that moment.
After the SUV is completely stripped, Phase 2 begins, the actual armoring of the vehicle. For a top-heavy SUV, the initial challenge is to make sure the armor does not adversely affect the vehicle's center of gravity.
Anytime you get into an SUV at all, you have a high center of gravity, so you have the potential to roll over. Once you add the extra weight of the armoring, and the extra weight is going to depend on the level of the armoring, then you have that increased capability of what rollover due to the weight transfer.
The physics are important because the armored SUV must be able to handle aggressive driving maneuvers.
As you're trying to maneuver around to avoid that ambush, you're moving through oftentimes an urban area under fire with a top-heavy vehicle, and you may be hitting curbs, you may be hitting buildings, you may be hitting various debris in the road. So it's very likely that you may lose control or have a rollover.
To keep the center of gravity low on the vehicle, Alpine makes sure that the weight of the floor armor is heavier than the armor they will put on the roof later. A thick undercarriage is also important because some lethal threats to a car, such as roadside bombs, come up from the ground. Other attacks involve gunfire at the front, sides, and rear of the car. So the most strongly fortified section is the upper passenger compartment, which includes doors and windows.
What you need to do is make priorities on what you want to protect. The main thing is the people. So the passenger compartment is something that you really have to armor completely.
To convert this SUV to protection level 9 means Alpine will add half-inch thick pieces of steel to the doors and ballistic glass nearly 2 inches thick in the windows. Determining the correct amount of armor to put on the vehicle and its exact placement is a technical art based on the size of the engine and powertrain. If too much weight is added, it will slow the vehicle down.
The whole purpose of the armored car is to buy you time as soon as you recognize that the attack is unfolding.
In most cases, it's just a matter of seconds. But it's the difference between life and death. Corporate executives, political leaders, and celebrities worldwide look to armored cars for a sense of security in a violent world.
You want to not be seen, and if you are seen, not to be hit. If you're hit, you want to avoid being penetrated and killed.
Alpine Armoring specializes in converting off-the-lot cars into combat-ready vehicles. For customers overseas, Alpine considers vehicles that best fit the particular region where they will be driven.
If I'm in a different country, and if I'm charged with protecting a diplomat, maybe I stand out and I lose my low profile because I'm driving a Chevrolet Suburban, depending on where I'm using it. So maybe the next best vehicle would be a Toyota Land Cruiser.
Driving a super luxurious vehicle in certain regions of the world is like asking to be robbed or kidnapped. In Mexico City, for example, billionaires and high-profile individuals often convert more modest cars like Jettas and Camrys to avoid attention. But in wealthier places, such as Dubai, a Range Rover or Mercedes are commonly driven vehicles and won't become automatic targets. Right now, this family-friendly SUV is still in phase 2 of its conversion, the armoring phase.
So you take something like a Mercedes that has enough space to be able to take what is the passenger compartment and turn it into a capsule. To a large extent, you can have a vehicle that really doesn't cost that much more than a normal car or even look that much differently, or you can go all the way up to a very high level of protection against all sorts of different attacks.
The type and amount of armoring Alpine installs is based upon a customer's specific needs.
Each region of the world is going to have different preferred or likely weapons. What you need to do is take a look at your daily commute and see what the likely threats are going to be and armor up against those.
Just as an individual's needs vary from country to country, so does the standard used to legally measure an armored car's level of ballistic resistance. Worldwide, there are many different standards, so most armored car companies create their own ballistic charts. Then, customers can choose the level of protection they want. Alpine rates its armor on a scale of A1 to A10.
By the time you get to the 10th level, which is essentially the presidential limousine, you're able to handle most everything that's out there in the streets. And that includes some very serious weapons.
This SUV's owner and destination is classified information. However, Alpine can reveal that this SUV is going to be armored at level A9. That's some serious protection.
To put it in a nutshell, it basically means that it stops high-power rifles.
High-powered rifles and assault rifles are the standard small arms used by modern armies and criminals. Some of the most common weapons are the AK-47, a lightweight, easy-to-handle rifle that can put out a lot of lead quickly, and .308 caliber rifles, often used by highly skilled snipers. Because customers' lives depend on the quality of the armor, Alpine regularly tests random samples of the armor it installs on the vehicles. Alpine's ballistics experts decide to see how the armor will do against a military-grade armor-piercing bullet. At a range of 15 feet, Alpine's sharpshooter aims at a piece of steel plating that will be used to armor the SUV. The bullet is fired at 1,900 miles per hour, 2.5 times the speed of sound. The armor-piercing rounds penetrate, but do not punch all the way through the steel. Technically, this armor could pass at Alpine's level A10. Now that the steel armor has passed the quality test, Alpine's engineering department transmits a computerized blueprint of the armoring design to its metal cutting machine. The world's first blueprint for an armored car was made by hand, not a computer. Sometime around 1485, Leonardo da Vinci came up with the concept for a vehicle that could protect passengers on the battlefield. Da Vinci designed the vehicle to run on 4 wheels, but the body was circular in shape so that the gunman could fire at a range of 360 degrees around. The first production armored cars were created at the beginning of the 20th century. Rolls-Royce was the first to do it successfully on a wide scale and sent some early models onto the battlefield in World War I. Americans later adapted the technology for cash-carrying armored trucks, but the quality of the manufacturing was crude.
It used to be that you'd have to take something like chrome steel, armor plates, and essentially tack them on the outsides of the vehicle so you become this behemoth rolling down the road.
In 1927, after a gang of crooks used a landmine to blow up an armored truck and steal $104,000, automakers shifted into high gear to improve armored car technology.
For every vehicle that's attacked, the very next vehicle is stronger because of it.
World War II had a huge impact on technology as the military began developing composite armor materials. Composites are plastics, ceramics, and lighter metals layered together. In the mid-1950s, the U.S. Army experimented with a composite called siliceous cord armor on tanks. This proved to be a great success because it's stronger yet lighter than steel. The breakthrough made by the military paved the way to the development and use of composites on today's civilian armored cars. Today, common composites used in vehicle armoring include ballistic nylon, Kevlar blankets, and polyethylene fiber. For this SUV, Alpine is using a combination of composites and steel. The only way to seamlessly hide armor is to cut it into small sections. For this vehicle, that means hundreds of meticulously cut pieces.
The object is to never be able to tell. It's low profile or even no profile. You don't want to be able to tell.
Cutting bullet and bomb-resistant materials like these is no easy task. It requires a precision tool called a plasma cutter. Plasma cutters work by sending an electrical arc through an inert gas, such as oxygen, nitrogen, or argon, that is passing through a nozzle at a high velocity. The electricity raises the temperature of the gas to a 4th state of matter, plasma. The plasma jetting out of the nozzle is so hot, over 20,000 degrees Fahrenheit, that it instantly melts and cuts the metal in a fine line. A computer guides the torch to cut along the pattern made on the blueprint. Assembling an armored car is like putting together a 3D jigsaw puzzle. Few pieces of armor are the same size. Each piece is measured against the area it must fill. If it's off by just a few millimeters, it must be resized. Once Alpine has the correct shape, the piece is welded into place. The angle of the armor plating is also important. Welders attach the metal so it's not flat, but sloped. This allows the armor to better deflect a round or blast fired directly at it. In some cases, workers even add a little extra space between the layers of armor to diffuse the energy of the projectile. This gives the ammo a place to expand and dissipate before entering the passenger compartment. One important innovation in armoring is the spall liner. It's typically made with composite material and is designed to absorb fragments when a bomb or RPG round explodes. The fragments dissipate throughout the spall liner, but don't penetrate the inner armor.
So you have a series of steel, composites, ceramics, carbon fiber, and all of which provide you this combination of protection.
Today's most advanced armored cars can go as fast as their thin-skinned equivalents, but making one is anything but quick. At Alpine Armoring, workers are transforming this luxury SUV into a heavily armored yet innocent-looking armored car. Hundreds of man-hours have gone into applying layers of armor around the vehicle's frame. Now, they are moving to production phase 3, armoring doors, windows, gas tanks, suspension, and wheels. It begins with adding extra panels of steel around each window frame to completely seal the passenger compartment.
From outside, you can't tell. Once you open the door, it's an overlap area that goes around the window. That's where the glass meets the body of the vehicle. So you have to protect that area because that little area could otherwise be a weak spot. And as a result, the penetration could occur.
Next, the windows are replaced with certified ballistic glass, along with power window motors strong enough to support the heavier glass weight. The windows are then recalibrated to open up only a couple of inches.
The longer they go down, the more probability is for some bad guys trying to do something. So we just do it enough for passing documents, pay the toll or what have you.
To compensate for the increased weight of the doors, Alpine replaces the manufacturer's door hinges with specially designed heavy-duty hinges. Extra bolts are also installed to reinforce the door to the armor.
Our design builds a system that allows the door to ride on the armor, not the armor riding on the door.
Safety modifications are then made to the fuel system. Technicians add a 1/4-inch thick ballistic fuel tank plate. This protects the gas tank from every angle of attack. Next, the brakes and suspension are upgraded to accommodate the extra weight. An optional second battery is also installed for backup.
You'd like to have dual batteries so that if one battery is penetrated and ends up shorting out, you still have electric power and you're able to keep on moving.
Next, the armorers turn their attention to the wheels. If the tires are blown out, the SUV could easily turn into a steel coffin. To avoid this worst-case scenario, Alpine installs run-flat tire systems on all their cars. The technology centers around a U-shaped metal device that is attached to the wheel rim. If the tire loses air pressure, this mechanism takes over the function of the rubber tread. In the event of a blowout, these inserts will allow the vehicle to drive at high speeds for 50 miles, depending on conditions. This will keep a vehicle moving out of a dangerous situation. The tailpipe is another vulnerable point. If it's blocked, the engine won't start. To guard against this, Alpine installs laser-cut tailpipe guards. Armorers have learned many of these features from the military by studying how combat-ready vehicles are made. Some armored car makers do their own research and development to find stronger armoring materials. But none of these manufacturers would be able to make armored cars as strong as they are today without the ballistic technology developed by the military. The ballistic standard for military vehicles is much higher than for civilian cars. The presidential limo, known as the Beast, offers the highest level of protection a citizen can get, level A10 by Alpine armoring standards. Yet, it would be considered a lightweight in the military world. The military is actively developing armored vehicles that look like civilian cars, but have battlefield capabilities. This prototype is called the Smart Truck. It's built on the frame of a stock vehicle.
You take a truck chassis and you throw away pretty much everything except the wheels, the suspension, the seats, and even the cab. And then you build from the ground up so that what you're doing is you're making an extremely protected box that has a few firing ports and viewports out of it.
Once armored, the Army installed multiple defensive features on the truck. These include onboard computer and wireless communication systems, night vision cameras, extremely bright lights on the front and rear bumpers to blind assailants, pepper spray dispensers, and electric shock door handles. If being chased, the truck can put out a smoke screen, drop tire-piercing tacks, or dump an oil slick. But when defensive measures aren't enough, the truck goes into the offensive mode. A grenade launcher rises out of the roof. It's operated by remote control from inside the cab of the vehicle. Targets are sighted with the help of 4 cameras on the roof and a 5th camera mounted on top of the gun. While the Smart Truck was created to explore new technologies to protect military and civilian passengers at home and abroad, there is currently no plan to put it into production or active service. Back at Alpine Armoring, the SUV is now entering Phase 4, reassembling the interior. And this is not just about passenger comfort, it's also about protection. During an evasive maneuver, the force of a sharp turn can cause the passenger's head to be slammed against the side of the cabin. At Alpine, the installers add extra cushioning to the interior lining, so the chances of a passenger suffering a head injury are greatly reduced.
In certain areas, especially for VIPs who are sitting in the back, we want to make sure they get plenty of padding.
This step requires highly skilled craftsmanship.
We'll almost have 2 different quality controls, if you will. Before you put that interior in, you make sure that that armor is perfect. And then you build another car inside that's cocoon of safety. You reassemble, there's the original equipment manufacturer's interior, and you do it flawlessly.
Alpine double stitches the material so it has an aesthetically pleasing look. After this is completed, the seats, dash, and all of the original parts are reinstalled in the car. Once again, the SUV looks like an ordinary passenger vehicle. But Alpine's work isn't done. After weeks of armoring, the SUV is entering Phase 5 of production. The installation of options and exotic countermeasures. All are specially designed to fit a client's needs. One of the most popular features is the smoke screen, requiring an alteration of the exhaust system.
Well, it's called smoke screen, but it's not. It's water-based, and therefore it is all steam. And as a result, it's very environmentally friendly.
It's also safer than other options.
When you do oil spill or tack dispensers, those stuff stay on the road. And if the good guy, let's say a soccer mom with a bunch of kids in a minivan, is behind that bad guy, and all of a sudden they're driving on this oil spill, then you have an issue.
Clients can also order features that might only be seen in a James Bond movie.
You can add fire suppression systems, both to the engine and or the passenger compartment. You can put in oxygen overpressure systems so that if there is some sort of a biological threat, you create an overpressure in the vehicle so that it doesn't allow gases to penetrate the vehicle.
The vehicle is also fitted to see in total darkness.
You've got night vision systems, so you can essentially turn out all your lights and still be able to drive down the road at high speed with good situation awareness all around you.
Lieutenant, manual.
Less exotic, but just as crucial, are features like sirens, strobes, and wigwag lights.
And this would be my wigwag light.
A combination of wigwags and other high-intensity lights can do more than just forge a path through traffic to safety. They can distract or disorient an assailant headed straight for you. Video cameras can also be installed to see dangers approaching the vehicle.
Testing.
An intercom system is also considered a necessity in any armored vehicle's security package. This allows passengers to communicate with anyone outside the vehicle.
So you can actually talk to them and hear them and find out what is going on. We think that's a very desirable feature.
Having an armored car with high-tech features is one thing. Knowing how to drive it is another.
If you get attacked and you drive your vehicle and crash it, you just did the job of your aggressors or your attackers.
It's not just a vehicle that stops bullets. It's a whole concept and how you'd use that vehicle to escape a threat.
Buying a $300,000 state-of-the-art armored SUV wouldn't be worth a dime if you didn't know how to drive it.
The driver is always more important because the armored car by itself cannot recognize and avoid an attack, whether it's a kidnap, assassination, carjacking. What the armored car does is it gives us more ability to counter. If the shots are hitting the armored car, not penetrating it, the driver has more time to utilize the skills that they're going to use to get off of that attack site. Without the driver, the vehicle is static. It does nothing on its own.
If you think of a race car driver, they have to be able to drive at high speeds. Now, off-road racers have to handle everything from undulating terrain, obstacles, and handle a vehicle that may be bouncing through the air. Now, even that is not up to the level of an armored car driver, who has to deal with bullets and a determined opponent who's trying to ambush them.
To obtain the necessary skills, drivers attend courses at facilities such as International Training Incorporated. Students travel from around the world to study at this 900-acre complex. The facility has about 2 miles of paved courses designed to replicate real-world driving situations and conditions. It also has 5 miles of off-road trails. Students range from personal security professionals to government contractors looking to improve their driving skills. Private citizens who might be high-risk targets for robbery, kidnapping, and assassination also take the course.
We're going to have you get into this vehicle and drive around this alley, simulating that you're driving in a close-quarter urban environment.
The 3-day course begins with an education in surveillance and attack detection. Attackers typically study a target's travel patterns and strike where vulnerable. So students are taught to be security aware at all times.
Get that vehicle in reverse as quick as you can and back yourselves out of this and turn around.
First of all, we want to be able to recognize that you possibly may be under surveillance for an attack or that attack may be impending.
Instructors share secrets on how drivers can identify potential threats and discuss which driving strategies work best for every kind of scenario. Behind-the-wheel training starts by allowing the students to get a feel for the physical differences between driving an armored SUV and a regular one.
is you can't get in it and drive it like a thin-skinned vehicle, like a lighter vehicle. And people who get into one and presume that they can may result in just having an accident because they're improperly handling it.
Several exercises teach students how to handle the extra weight of an armored car.
Think of an armored vehicle kind of like a dump truck compared to a Volkswagen. You take an unarmored vehicle and an armored vehicle the same type, you've kind of made that same difference in weight.
The added weight severely affects braking distances.
They have to learn they're not going to stop as quick. If we're doing a lot of repeated braking, the heavier weight's going to make the brakes wear faster, and so then the brakes are not going to become as responsive.
Despite the potential braking hazards, drivers must learn to speed up when attacked. The average armored vehicle takes 6 to 12 rounds in an ambush. If a dozen bullets strike in one spot on an armored car or windshield, they could eventually penetrate the armor. The faster a vehicle moves while under attack, the wider the bullet dispersion pattern becomes, greatly reducing the odds of penetration.
The whole purpose of the armored car is to buy you time as soon as you recognize that the attack is unfolding.
Learning how to handle the weight transfer of an armored SUV is also crucial, especially in high-speed turns. Once the students are comfortable with the vehicle, then they learn techniques needed to survive urban warfare. The best way to train for this is to reenact ambushes.
What we've done is we've taken that similar formula, whether it happened in Colombia or whether it happened in Europe, whether it was a criminal attack or a terrorist attack, and then we apply those to scenarios.
There's no real ammunition used, but the drivers often become so immersed in these exercises, they forget it's only a simulated attack. Having the opportunity to practice these maneuvers is the only way a driver can learn how to stay calm under fire.
One of the things we try to teach the students is not to overdrive the vehicle. Don't do your adversary's job for you.
Today, a student is driving an armored SUV into a scenario ripped straight from the streets of Baghdad. What looks like a temporary traffic barricade is actually an ambush planned by criminals. As the driver gets closer, his training kicks in. He recognizes trouble. To get out of the trap, he executes an evasive maneuver. His goal is to keep moving and escape. For most dignitaries, having a high-quality armored car with a well-trained driver is enough to survive their daily commute. Research is always underway at Alpine Armoring to improve the technology that goes into converting assembly line automobiles into powerful secret weapons of personal security. As warfare moves from the battlefield to the urban street, the military looks to manufacture combat-ready cars that can blend into any environment. Recently, a revolutionary new conversion burst onto the scene that blurs the line between civilian and military technology.
When we're in the middle of a conflict, there's a lot of very fast reactive development. There's a lot of development on the military side, and that flows back to the civilian, the commercial side.
This quasi-military, quasi-civilian SUV is called the Dillon Tactical Vehicle.
This vehicle didn't exist 18 months ago. Most people would say, well, that just looks like another soccer mom Suburban going down the street. But in the event that something does happen, you can get the gun up, suppress whatever threat that you may get your people out and be gone before those people could ever react to that and fire again.
While the Dillon Tactical Vehicle is a new idea, the M134D minigun hidden within is not. It's an improved version of a Gatling gun. Mike Dillon spent 16 years developing it for his specialized armored vehicles.
The gun is particularly good in self-protection on a vehicle because it's easy to hide. You don't have to advertise that you're carrying a high-powered machine gun down the street. You want to protect dignitaries or kings or presidents. They can all be neatly folded away, and it takes less than 5 seconds to deploy it and put it into action.
While you can't buy this armored car for use in the United States, private security contractors who work overseas will find it useful.
You have presidential convoys, ambassadors, somebody who's going through a high-risk area. It'd be fine to have something that's a very offensive capability like this.
Dillon Aero makes the 6-barreled electrically driven machine gun by hand at their plant in Scottsdale, Arizona. It shoots a 7.62 millimeter round at a rate of 3,000 shots per minute. The gun can be added to several types of SUVs after a vehicle is fully armored. Workers specially trained to assemble the vehicle as well as operate it start the process by welding metal grating onto the floor of the car to support the gun mount. Then the gun turret is installed. A steel box with a spring-loaded gun mount is installed after that. Now, the M134D minigun is mounted. Hinges are bolted to the custom-cut sunroof, and 2 bulletproof semicircular roof panels are attached. The hinges contain sealed grease fittings to allow the unique sunroof to swing open quickly and smoothly. In a matter of hours, the vehicle is ready. A full load of blank cartridges are added so they can take it out on the streets for a test run. Everything from the doors of the sunroof to the spring-loaded gun mount to the gun itself worked perfectly the first time. The turret rotates 360 degrees, just as designed, so the shooter can easily spin around and fire in any direction he chooses. Some of Dillon's clients have reported that just the sound of the M134D firing stops criminals in their tracks.
The sound of the gun is ferocious, that it will almost take you off your feet. It is so loud.
At Alpine Armoring, finding ways to build stronger, more bullet-resistant armored vehicles is a constant endeavor.
There's always going to be another weapon to stop. There's always a reason to make it lighter. There's always a reason to make it better.
A critical defensive component of any armored vehicle is the windshield. Installation is the 6th and final phase of armoring.
Years ago, when you looked through the windshield, it almost looked like you were looking through a fishbowl. They were so thick. If you drove behind them for a half hour, 40 minutes, you had a lot of eye strain. You didn't have a lot of clarity.
Level A9 bullet-resistant windshields weigh about 200 pounds and are technically transparent armor, not glass.
One of the surprises that you can make armor and be able to see through it.
Different manufacturers make different variations of bullet-resistant glass, but typically it's made by layering a polycarbonate material between pieces of ordinary glass in a process called lamination. At the ballistics lab, Alpine tests the glass they've ordered for the Mercedes to see if it delivers what the manufacturer promises. The bullet pierces the outside layer of the glass, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. But it does not penetrate the layer of polycarbonate glass material on the other side. Instead, the windshield has absorbed the bullet's energy and stopped it from entering the inside of the vehicle. It's taken 3 months of meticulous labor to turn this everyday SUV into a level A9 armored car. About 1,500 pounds of ballistic steel and glass have been added to its frame. Its suspension and braking have been modified to support the extra weight, and it's been loaded with dozens of personal security options. It's gone from a family-friendly SUV to a tool of personal protection that can defend its passengers from high-powered rifles. Most incredibly, it still looks the same way it did when it drove into Alpine's plant. All the security the owner needs without any unwanted attention. Now it's ready for delivery. Where it's headed must remain a secret, but for armored cars in general, the future is a little less mysterious. Recently, a promising new composite called Smart Armor became commercially available. It's shown to be extremely good at stopping armor-piercing bullets, bomb blast waves, and fragmentation from improvised explosive devices. The most exciting breakthrough in the past year is liquid armor.
This is something the military is developing for penetrators. If you have certain armor-penetrating rounds, you need to catch them. And so this acts as a liquid with nanoparticles embedded in it.
Within a millisecond of being hit, the liquid armor forms into a matrix, catches the round, and stops it. Engineers are also starting to use computer models to see how an armored car will look and react to different types of rounds fired at it.
These new virtual environments, virtual reality, and gaming systems are going to be really the key to the future of looking at new options.
For many armorers, the goal is to find new materials and methods to make armored vehicles stronger, safer, lighter, and more affordable. This will take the science of armored cars into the next generation.
That magic formula is within the reach, and we would like to be the first to get there.